During my grandfather's funeral, who raised me like a parent, my phone rang. Who could it be at a time like this? As I pressed the call button, curious yet apprehensive, I was greeted by the mocking, loud voice of my boss, Tom. Prioritizing your grandfather's funeral over work. I can fathom that. Anyone who takes time off for mere ceremonies like this will be fired. Despite having received my bereavement leave application, Tom went out of his way to call, which was downright cruel. Why must I endure such harassment? Recalling past instances of his harassment, I finally retorted. Then, I quit. Is that so? Make sure you submit your resignation as soon as possible. Tom, possibly not taking my words seriously, burst into laughter and hung up. However, his life took a steep downturn within a week. My name is Kevin Wilson, 33 years old. I work in sales for a company located in a quaint town in Nebraska, mainly dealing in wholesale, sourcing nutritious produce from farmers and selling it to stores. While I now live a peaceful life, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that my life has been a series of hardships. When I was 3, my father passed away in a work-related accident. It left my mother and me to fend for ourselves, but having never worked before, she quickly found herself struggling. Moreover, she had been unfaithful even during my father's life, and instead of changing her ways, she boldly started dating younger men after becoming a single parent. Eventually, she declared me a nuisance and hardly ever returned home. A concerned neighbor, unable to overlook my situation, called the police, leading to a discussion among the adults. I don't remember much as I was quite young at the time, but the result was that my paternal grandfather was contacted, and I ended up being raised by him in the quaint town of Nebraska. My grandfather was in his 60s then. A vigorous man, he had retired from the Navy in his 50s and was working locally. Originally, I planned to work right after high school, not wanting to burden my grandfather. I had thought about working right after high school, not wanting to rely on him, who was living on his pension. However, he strongly opposed the idea. I've worked for many years and have managed to save a bit. You're my precious grandson. Don't worry, I'll make sure you get to college, he insisted. With his support, I was able to attend a well-known local university. Truth be told, I wanted to pursue higher education and specialize in a field. With a dream of revitalizing this area and developing local industries, I enrolled in the economics department at university, grateful to my grandfather, and studied distribution knowledge and international perspectives. I continued to work for a local company where I had been part-timing during my studies and have been extending my service years since. Initially, I struggled with the unfamiliar tasks and often faced reprimands from my bosses and colleagues. However, by taking the time to build long-term relationships with farmers and shopkeepers, I gradually earned their trust. Now, with improved performance, I hold the position of a supervisor. I found the work fulfilling and led a satisfying life, but my boss remained a concern. Tom became my supervisor last year, a self-centered man who disrupts those around him with his whims. He seems to view his subordinates as personal attendants, summoning us for trivial matters and exploiting us for any reason. Regardless of urgent tasks or scheduled meetings, he disregards our commitments, causing headaches. Kevin, make me a coffee, 2 sugars, no milk. I'm sorry, Tom. I'm currently occupied with urgent paperwork. While I'm open to work-related instructions, his demands are purely personal. However, attempting to refuse only leads to his persistent complaints about following orders. His troubling behavior didn't stop there, it escalated further. Even moments before crucial meetings with important clients, he would burden us with unnecessary tasks like shredding irrelevant documents or organizing receipts, tasks that could wait. Once he was out of sight, my colleagues and I would quickly support each other, but this eventually began to hinder our work. Wondering why such a person was appointed as a manager, I came to understand upon hearing rumors. Tom is the son of the sister of our company's president, Harris. In other words, he is the nephew of Harris, who, after being laid off, was aimlessly wandering until Harris's sister requested a favor for his employment through family connections. Harris is known for his passionate and caring nature. While this trait allows us to maintain close interactions with local farmers and clients, it also leads to troublesome situations like dealing with Tom. Tom was bragging about his connections and took it out on his subordinates by picking on them as a way to vent. Though I initially referred to it as teasing, it gradually turned into severe harassment. And it seems that I have been chosen as his next target. I have a hunch why Tom dislikes me. In this company, where I've been working for 10 years, I've always worked tirelessly. I took on whatever I could, eagerly learned what I didn't know, and continuously expanded my knowledge. Thanks to that, clients started to remember my face and name, asking specifically for me to be their contact. While I was happy to be recognized for my hard work, Tom seemed to resent it. Spreading cheer as part of the job is ridiculous. Work isn't play. You should be grateful that we even employ someone like you. Constantly hearing snide remarks from Tom wasn't pleasant, but I kept focusing on my work. On a personal note, I still live in my grandfather's house. He's someone I admire, so I was happy to live with him even as an adult. My grandfather, now in his 80s, still cultivates fruits in a field he created in the mountains. Carrying heavy loads and sometimes even climbing trees made me worry about his safety as his grandchild. Truthfully, I wished he would consider retirement for his health, given his age. However, he would always say, "I want to work as long as my body allows. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not ready to be outdone by the younger folks yet," with a laugh, and then head to the field. I respect him even more for his strength. However, my fulfilling life came crashing down one day. A phone call at work turned my world upside down. My grandfather had passed away. He had been working in the field that morning and, as usual, was having coffee at his favorite cafe in the afternoon. Then, suddenly, he collapsed. Upon hearing that the cafe staff had hastily called an ambulance, I rushed to the hospital, but by the time my grandfather was transported there, he had already passed away. According to the doctor's explanation, he had suffered from an acute myocardial infarction. It's a disease that clogs the blood vessels in the heart, causing the heart to stop working. The shock of his sudden passing left me overwhelmed with sadness and loneliness, but I had no time to grieve as one responsibility after another demanded my attention. I rushed to arrange the funeral, while also notifying friends and relatives. Being the only one to prepare for his send-off, I went to explain the situation at work the same day. "My grandfather passed away today. I need to take some time off to prepare for the wake and the funeral." My colleagues and seniors offered their condolences, expressing their concern for me. "Don't worry about work, we've got it covered, and don't stress about work. Just focus on saying goodbye to your grandfather," they said, showering me with kind words one after another. Their kind words almost brought me to tears as I filled out the bereavement leave form. But as I was about to submit it to Tom, my junior, Kyle, stopped me. Kyle is a thoughtful subordinate who subtly helps me out and covers for me when Tom targets me for no apparent reason. "Kevin, be careful around Tom. If he says anything, let's go talk to Harris together," Kyle advised. I found it disturbing, but I couldn't understand why he would say that. With the sudden passing of my grandfather, I didn't have the bandwidth to worry about anything else, so I just nodded to Kyle and made my way to Tom's desk. I explained the situation to him and handed him the bereavement leave form. He looked at the form indifferently for a while, then sighed deeply. "So, it was your grandpa who died, not your parents, right?" "Yes, my grandfather passed away, so I need some time off for the wake and the funeral." I wondered why he asked that again. Despite my confusion, after I answered, he let out an even bigger sigh and threw the documents onto his desk. If it's not your parents, why do you need to take time off from work? Apparently, Tom was unaware of my family situation. My father has passed away, and I'm estranged from my mother. My grandfather raised me in their stead, so I need to handle the funeral arrangements. I explained my family circumstances again, but he still seemed unsatisfied. But you must have other relatives. Let them handle it. He was my beloved grandfather. He raised me since I was a child, and we lived together. I want to be the one to see him off. Despite my polite explanation, all I got in return was he clicking his tongue. Did you forget? There's an important meeting in a week. If you take time off now, we won't be ready in time, he said, clearly worried about the timing. I finally understood that he was concerned about this. The meeting was about a major project aimed at revitalizing the entire area, in collaboration with the local Chamber of Commerce. Although he was in charge, I was the one who had been leading the preparations. It was a significant undertaking for our company, so both of us had been putting a lot of effort into getting ready. Don't worry, my colleagues have agreed to cover for me, and of course, as soon as I return to work, I'll get straight back to the preparations, I reassured him. I had already planned to work overtime if necessary to catch up on any work I missed during the 2 days off. But before I could elaborate, he interrupted me with a twisted face. So, even as a supervisor, you're abandoning your work responsibilities. I never thought you were this irresponsible. Promoting you was a mistake, he criticized harshly. Hearing this, I felt a surge of anger. Taking bereavement leave is a basic right as an employee. Why must I endure such harsh criticism for a reasonable request? I clenched my fists, trying to contain my emotions, but he continued to sigh exaggeratedly. There's always someone like this, never growing out of the student mindset, even after years. It's a critical time for the company, and yet, why would you apply for leave? He lamented. I felt my body trembling with rage. Already burdened with the sorrow of losing my dear grandfather, I had not anticipated such harsh words from him. That's enough. It's clear you lack motivation. I'll reluctantly accept your application, but think carefully about whether you really need to take time off, Tom said before rising theatrically, taking my leave application and walking away. Regardless, I had submitted the application. Suppressing the frustration smoldering within me, I bid Tom farewell. Afterward, I handed over my tasks to my colleagues and went home. Time and events seemed to pass in a blur. I arranged for a funeral home and a priest for the ceremony, and organized meals for the attendees. After informing relatives and friends, I chose a memorial photo of my grandfather. He had served as a Navy officer, gaining experience in the field before eventually taking up a position on shore. By the time he took me in, he had already retired, and all the photos from his later years showed him with a gentle smile. Looking at the spread-out photos, I naturally smiled, reminiscing about the memories shared with him. It felt as though the memories of my childhood spent with him came flooding back all at once. I ultimately chose a photo of him in his Navy uniform. The picture of my grandfather, adorned with medals and capturing his dignified expression, turned out to be a very good choice. The funeral was initially intended to be a small, intimate gathering, but many of his Navy comrades expressed a desire to attend. As a result, we had to opt for a larger venue, capable of accommodating about 100 guests. Moreover, locals who had been kind to him in his later years also gathered, and during the ceremony, many wept for him. Thinking of how beloved my grandfather was by so many, brought tears to my eyes. At the meal after the ceremony, we served the fresh fruits harvested by my grandfather the day before he passed. Everyone was delighted, expressing joy at being treated to such a feast, smiling at both my grandfather and me. I truly thought it was a fitting funeral for a man as loved as my grandfather, but then my phone, ticked in my pocket, rang. Looking at the screen, I saw Tom's name. As soon as I touched the call button, A loud, uninhibited voice came through. "You're not really planning to take the whole day off, are you? Make sure you come to work in the afternoon, understood?" he barked. "But today is the funeral. I've taken bereavement leave." I reminded him, surprised that he would call about this when he himself had received my application. But without waiting for me to finish, Tom burst out laughing. "A funeral for your grandfather? I can't see how that takes precedence over work. Anyone who takes leave for a funeral should be fired," he declared. He was threatening to fire me for attending the funeral of the grandfather who raised me. Why must I be subjected to such harassment? Recalling his past torments, I finally retorted, "Then I'll resign." "Is that so? Choosing a deceased family member over the company makes you unfit to be my subordinate. Submit your resignation as soon as possible," he said. Tom, seemingly not taking my words seriously, laughed heartily and hung up the phone. I stared at the darkened screen of my phone for a while before taking a deep breath and heading to the bathroom. Gazing at my reflection in the mirror, I pondered deeply. I had loved my job and devoted 10 years to it. Until now, I had been blessed with good relationships both with clients and within the company, and I truly didn't want to quit. But my grandfather's funeral was a once-in-a-lifetime event. He had taken me in when I lost my father and was abandoned by my mother, raising me with love and care. If the company couldn't respect my need to honor such a grandfather, then I was ready to resign. Though he was overjoyed when I got this job, I was confident I could find another job soon. After washing my face thoroughly, I steeled myself for what was to come. When I returned to the office after the bereavement leave, my concerned colleagues surrounded me. "Guys, I'm sorry, but Tom said anyone who takes time off for personal events like a funeral will be fired. Maybe I should have chosen work, but I couldn't abandon my grandfather's funeral," I explained. My colleagues and juniors were taken aback, their eyes wide in disbelief. Some murmured, "What is Tom thinking?" Despite being a supervisor, I'm truly sorry, but after being spoken to like that by Tom, I no longer wish to stay at the company, so I'll resign as he demanded, I continued. As I looked around at my shocked colleagues, I went on. "I'll submit my resignation within a few days. Tom wanted it soon, but there's an important meeting coming up, so I'll make sure to handle that handover properly. Thank you all for everything." I believe my voice trembled a bit as I said my final goodbyes. They tried to persuade me to reconsider my resignation, urging me to rethink my decision. However, my resolve was firm, and above all, I feared that staying at the company would only lead to further harassment from him. For the meeting handover, I sent all the relevant documents and data to my colleagues and answered any questions they had. After completing the handover for the meeting, I submitted my resignation to Tom. Thus ended my 10-year career with the company. A week had passed since the funeral, and it was the day of the important meeting. As I was relaxing at home, the company called me at 11 a.m. "Yes, this is Kevin," I answered. "Kevin, there's been a huge problem with the meeting," came Kyle's voice, trembling as if he was holding back laughter. His detailed report went like this. "Today's meeting brought together senior executives from my company and representatives from the local Chamber of Commerce. The agenda was about setting up a system to sell local agricultural products online. In the town where I live, which is nestled in the mountains, aging is progressing rapidly, leading to an increase in people who are unable to go shopping in the downtown area. This has caused a continuous decline in sales for the shopping district. This led to stores reducing their inventory and, consequently, farmers producing less. As a result, our company, which handled distribution, was also seeing decreased revenue. The proposed plan involved delivering harvested goods not only to local wholesalers but directly to individuals' homes. Orders would be accepted through our company's website, social media, and phone. This information would then be compiled and communicated to the farmers, who would confirm the orders on site and ship the products directly to the customers. This way, we could deliver vegetables to residents unable to go shopping and allow out-of-state customers to enjoy fresh, locally sourced specialties. As the number of out-of-state customers increased, both the farmers and our company, acting as intermediaries, could see an increase in revenue. This project was critical for our company. The meeting took place today, and one issue came up. The issue was my resignation from the company as the planner of the project. The key point of this plan is to directly purchase fresh produce from the producers, that is, the farmers, and sell it in each store. In other words, me, working as a sales representative, was seen as the company's representative to the farmers, and they participated in this plan because I was involved. Many farmers are still traditionally difficult to deal with. When I first joined the company, there were many times I was turned away without even being heard. But over 10 years, I never gave up visiting them, negotiating until both the company and the farmers were satisfied, and that trust I finally gained was my weapon. That's probably why we were able to realize this direct sales project. And then came my resignation at this critical moment. Kyle, still chuckling, explained to me how the meeting went. As soon as the meeting started, the farmers noticed I wasn't there and asked why. It was only then that Harris realized I was absent and, surprised, urged my direct supervisor, Tom, to provide an answer. Then, Tom casually said, "Our sales representative, Kevin, resigned the other day. He is no longer an employee of ours, so going forward, this employee will take over. We appreciate your cooperation," as he introduced Kyle. However, Kyle shared that he was called in by Tom the day before the meeting and was unilaterally instructed to take over all the duties I had been handling. Even though I had handed over the necessary documents and project details, sales is not a simple task that can be managed just by looking at the documents. Moreover, he had anticipated that a young and unfamiliar employee like Kyle would not be easily accepted by the local farmers. But it seems Tom had not at all anticipated the reaction that Kyle had predicted. When the farmers, angered upon hearing of my resignation, Tom seemed to finally grasp the seriousness of the situation. They loudly protested, saying they agreed to this project because I was in charge. They confronted Tom, saying they were supportive of starting something new precisely because I, who had carefully handled their produce over many years, was involved. Why has Kevin, who worked so hard for us farmers, resigned? In the now noisy meeting room, Tom was just panicking. "Everyone," Kevin said, he had to take a leave from the company for his grandfather's funeral, even though there was an important meeting. "Isn't that a betrayal of your trust? That's why I reprimanded him," Tom said. Grandpa's funeral. Aaron, the leader among the farmers, reacted to Tom's words. "Yes, it's disgraceful for a working adult to abandon his job for a funeral," Tom said. "So, you're saying you fired the guy in charge because he prioritized his grandfather's funeral?" Aaron, with a change in his expression, pressed Tom for answers. Under Aaron's intensity, Tom was retreating, sweat forming on his forehead. "Yes, that's right. You all must have been disappointed. It's really rude," Tom said, trying to appease Aaron with a soft tone. But the next moment, Aaron stood up with a stern look. "Let's go, everyone. The project is cancelled." At Aaron's command, the people gathered began to stand up one by one. It was Tom and the company's upper management who were in a panic. "Please wait, everyone. Please calm down. There's no problem without Kevin," they pleaded. "We locals know. His grandpa was like a father to him. He looked so sad when he lost his grandpa," one of the locals spoke. Hanging on, Tom was told by Aaron, who was trying to contain his anger. But he managed the funeral respectably, sending off his grandpa in style. "We were impressed, thinking he's truly grown up to be a respectable adult." Tom and the other executives couldn't interject as Aaron continued. We trusted this project because we thought a company that has employees who value their family would have compassion. But it seems we were mistaken. That's not true. There were some circumstances. Tom tried to stop Aaron, but with a simple gesture of farewell, Aaron left the company. The other farmers and Chamber of Commerce representatives left in a similar manner. I felt sorry for Kyle as he recounted the events to me. "Sorry for putting you in such a tough spot. My bad," I said. No, Kevin. It's not your fault at all. It's impossible to just take over the trust you've built." Kyle responded with a smile. Afterward, Tom desperately ordered Kyle to bring back Aaron and the others. But Kyle argued it would be quicker to apologize to me and get me to return to the company than to convince Aaron and the others. Frustrated, Tom bit his lip and fell silent. He had targeted me and declared my direct dismissal. He probably couldn't backtrack on that. In the end, negotiations with the farmers didn't conclude, and the project was canceled. Tom was reprimanded by Harris, even being his nephew, at a recent board meeting for causing wrongful dismissal. The project's failure resulted in a huge loss, leading to Tom's demotion to a regular employee. After that, he received no favoritism due to being a relative. However, unsatisfied with being a regular employee, Tom left the job to start his own company. But without having done much work, he couldn't manage, and his company quickly went bankrupt. Burdened with debt from the business failure, he is now cut off by all his relatives. His current whereabouts are unknown. Meanwhile, Harris personally visited my home to apologize. He apologized for Tom's rudeness and asked if I would consider working for the company again. According to Harris, my resignation letter was still in process and kept on file. "I know it's a lot to ask, but we're in a bind without you. I really want to revitalize this region. Would you consider coming back to the company?" he pleaded. "All right, I'll return this time. I don't want to miss an opportunity to give back to the people of this region," I agreed. Thus, I returned to the company. The project was officially launched with me in charge, as planned. Harris sincerely reflected on hiring based on connections, even if requested by relatives, was his responsibility. He voluntarily took a pay cut for 3 months and promised us employees to work towards a more transparent company culture. Welcomed by colleagues and seniors, I pushed forward the project with enthusiasm. The plan is progressing smoothly and has been well received as it officially started. Orders from outside the state are increasing, and I truly hope it continues to grow at this pace. It was a close call, but thanks to kind people, I was able to return to my daily life. This experience deeply taught me the importance of relationships and trust. I'll continue to cherish the trust with my colleagues and the local community, treasuring every day. I'm sure my grandfather is watching over my efforts from above.